Sterling and Co. corporate tower still slept under the pale light of dawn. The hallways were empty, the offices quiet, the glass walls glowing softly with the first hint of morning. Maya Carter arrived earlier than anyone else, just as she always did. 32 years old, wearing a faded janitor's uniform, she moved with a calm, steady purpose. Her cleaning cart rolled beside her like a silent companion. Her eyes carried the weight of a life she never spoke about. When she stepped onto the executive floor, the quiet broke. A small group of junior employees noticed her and immediately began whispering. They tried to hide their laughter but made no real effort. "Look at her uniform," one muttered. Another smirked. "Can't believe someone that old is still doing this job." "Probably never even finished school," a third whispered. Maya didn't respond. She simply breathed in, breathed out, and kept working. She cleaned the CEO's office glass doors with slow, careful strokes as if every motion mattered. Behind her, the whispers continued, sharper this time. "Some people were just born to scrub floors," one of them said. Maya kept her eyes on the glass, but deep inside, something shifted, something she had kept hidden for years. Downstairs, the building was an entirely different world. Employees rushed through the lobby, anxious and overwhelmed. Today was CEO Richard Sterling's most important day, an emergency investor meeting that could determine the company's future. People hurried past Maya as if she were invisible, pushing by without apology. She stepped aside quietly, letting the chaotic river of executives flow around her. But then she saw him, a man in a gray jacket, standing alone near the elevators, too still, too focused. His eyes followed the lobby screen displaying the CEO's schedule, then the security guards, then the elevators, almost like he was counting, calculating. A cold feeling settled deep in Maya's chest, a feeling she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Something was wrong, very wrong. No one else noticed him, no one else even looked twice. But Maya couldn't look away. The building mocked her, ignored her, stepped over her. Yet she was the only one who sensed the danger quietly unfolding. And the woman everyone dismissed, the woman no one respected, was about to become the only person capable of stopping what was coming. Sterling and Co. corporate tower slowly woke under the rising sun. Golden light spilled through the tall windows and stretched across the polished marble floors, but no one paid attention to the quiet figure moving through it. Maya Carter worked alone on the executive floor, lifting discarded coffee cups, wiping fingerprints from expensive desks, and restoring order before the building truly came alive. Her silhouette glowed softly in the morning light, yet not a single person ever stopped long enough to see her. This floor belonged to the powerful. Maya moved through it like a shadow. Every day, she arrived an hour before her shift even started. Not to impress anyone, but because the stillness helped her breathe. Her life outside this tower was fragile, built on routines and responsibilities she could never afford to ignore. She didn't own a car. She lived in a small apartment near the industrial district, where sirens and factory noise filled the nights. And she carried the weight of raising her late brother's teenage daughter, Elena, a girl who needed stability more than anything. Their entire life depended on careful budgeting, quiet strength, and Maya's refusal to fall apart. Inside the company, though, most people didn't even know her name. To them, she was just a uniform pushing a cart. Invisible labor, they called it when they thought she couldn't hear. What they didn't know was that Maya had once been a field medic in high-risk conflict zones. She had treated wounds under fire. She had read human behavior the way others read spreadsheets. She had survived situations where seconds meant the difference between life and death. She left that world behind because the cost had finally become too heavy to carry. Pain had followed her home, and she refused to let it take the little bit of life she had left. Now Sterling Tower was her quiet escape, or at least it was supposed to be. Most days she only ever saw CEO Richard Sterling from a distance, a charismatic man in his 40s known for building the company from nothing. But lately, something had changed. The company was unstable. Stock prices were dropping. Investors were restless. Layoff rumors spread like smoke. Today's emergency investor meeting would decide whether the company survived or collapsed. Richard entered the building surrounded by assistants, his eyes glued to his tablet. Stress clung to him like a shadow. He walked right past Maya without noticing her step aside to give him space. No one ever noticed her. The entire building buzzed with tension. Analysts whispered in corners. Managers carried binders like lifelines. Security moved in tighter patterns than usual, aware that today was important. And yet the tower had an arrogance, a blind spot that assumed danger only came dressed in badges or suits. Anything else blended into the background. Maya had always seen the background more clearly than anyone else. As she polished the glass near the elevators, her thoughts returned to what she had seen earlier. The man in the gray jacket standing too still in the lobby. No employee tag, no visitor badge, no reason to be in a high-security building at dawn. His eyes had moved with intent, scanning guards, schedules, and exits. The same way trained soldiers surveyed terrain before an ambush. Maya recognized that look. She had once worn it herself, but she stayed quiet. Cleaners weren't taken seriously, and she had learned the hard way that speaking up in the wrong room could do more harm than good. Back on the executive floor, she overheard the junior employees gossiping again. If Sterling screws this up, we're all done. Half the department could get fired. I heard investors already want a new CEO. Their fear was loud, but their arrogance remained untouched. One of them tossed a crumpled paper deliberately near her feet. "You missed a spot," he said with a smirk. Maya calmly picked it up and placed it in her cart. Her dignity lived in places theirs could not reach. Later that morning, as she finished wiping down a hallway, the CEO suddenly stepped out of a conference room. His face was pale, his shoulders tense. "If this meeting goes bad," he whispered to his assistant, "everything my father left me, everything I've built, it's all gone." He didn't notice Maya standing nearby until he turned toward her. For a moment, the stress in his eyes softened. "Morning," he said for the first time in months. Maya nodded. "Good morning, sir." Their eyes met, his exhausted and anxious, hers calm and quietly steady. He walked away quickly, but something about her presence seemed to ground him for a brief second. Maya returned to her cart, her hands trembling just enough for her to notice. She didn't expect him to speak. She didn't expect it to matter, but deep inside, a small voice whispered a warning she hadn't heard in years. "Stay alert, something is coming." As she moved down the hallway, a memory flickered behind her eyes, a medic tent, a wounded soldier, her hands covered in blood, a moment that changed her forever. She blinked it away. She had promised herself she would never run toward danger again. She wanted a quiet life without fear, without loss, without the weight of saving anyone. But life rarely keeps the promises we make to ourselves. Outside the building, unnoticed by everyone, the man in the gray jacket finished observing the morning guard rotation. Then he stepped inside the tower. Maya saw him enter. For a fraction of a second, their eyes locked. And the alarms inside her spirit went cold and silent. Something inside Sterling Tower was about to break. And when it did, everyone who mocked her, ignored her, and stepped over her would learn that some people's true strength is silent until the moment the world needs them. Sterling and Co Tower roared fully to life as the morning settled in. Elevators chimed, phones rang nonstop, and hurried footsteps echoed across the marble floors. But beneath all that noise, Maya Carter felt something else, something tight and uneasy in the air. A feeling she couldn't explain but couldn't ignore. The man in the gray jacket moved through the lobby with a stillness that didn't match the rush around him. He slipped between groups of employees, timing his steps so security scanners never caught him. He blended into the crowd so naturally that no one bothered to look twice. But Maya did. As she pushed her cleaning cart toward the maintenance corridor, her gaze kept returning to him. Her ribs tightened with old instincts she wished she'd buried forever. Something about him felt wrong. Not suspicious, but coordinated. Prepared, like someone following a plan he'd practiced many times before. Inside the service hallway, Maya nearly missed a tiny glint on the ground. She bent down and picked up a small metallic fragment, barely bigger than a fingernail. But she knew exactly what it was, a broken piece of a communication device used by tactical units. It carried the faint smell of machine oil, the same smell she remembered from battlefield radios and soldier vests. For a moment her breath faltered, memories flashed smoke, a burning vehicle, a bleeding soldier clinging to life. She swallowed hard and forced her heartbeat to steady. "That life is behind me," she whispered. "This is just a coincidence." That's all, but then she heard voices in the stairwell. Low, focused. Controlled, men speaking in short phrases meant for precision, not conversation. She moved closer, quiet as a shadow. One voice said, "Sterling reaches the conference room in 20 minutes. Another replied, "Positions, sweep timing is ready." A third added, "No mistakes, we only get one shot." Maya froze. Those tones, those patterns, she knew them too well. This wasn't chaos. This wasn't random. It was an organized operation. She stepped back silently, mind racing. She had three options. She could warn security, but they rarely listened to someone like her. She could call the police, but they would never make it in time. Or she could walk away, just like she had promised herself she would do if she ever saw danger again. Her hands trembled as she pushed her cart farther down the hall. Meanwhile, on the executive floor, Richard Sterling tried to gather himself. Today's investor meeting would decide the fate of his company. His father's old watch sat tightly on his wrist, a piece of him he touched whenever the pressure became too much. He turned to his assistant and said quietly, "Let's get this over with." Maya watched him from the end of the hall. She could see how tired he looked, how much weight he carried. He had no idea he was walking straight into danger. No idea that something in the building had already shifted. The elevator numbers climbed. The fragment in her pocket felt heavier with every step. Her instincts pulsed like an alarm deep inside her chest. She whispered, "Not again, please, not again." She tried to focus on her cleaning. She wiped a glass panel, but her hand shook slightly. Her mind worked in a different way now, assessing, mapping, calculating. Every detail mattered. Every second mattered. The feeling wouldn't go away. She took the service elevator down, and as the doors opened, she nearly collided with the man in the gray jacket. He met her eyes. Cold, unblinking, too alert for a normal visitor. She apologized softly and stepped aside, but she watched him carefully. His hand hovered near his pocket. A hidden earpiece clung beneath his hood. Mud on his boots, not city mud, but forest mud. And beneath his jacket, a faint outline of something metallic pressed against the fabric. He nodded once, then walked off. Anyone else would forget him immediately. But Maya had seen the same eyes on soldiers preparing for high-risk missions. Only this man wasn't here to save anyone. She went straight to the security desk. Her voice was calm but urgent. "Excuse me," she said. "There are men in the stairwell. They don't have badges." There, the guard cut her off without even looking up. "Maintenance issues can be reported at 4 o'clock. "It's not maintenance," she insisted. "There, ma'am," he snapped. "I'm busy." Her words vanished into nothing. She stood there silently for a moment, not surprised, but deeply afraid. Meanwhile, the man in the gray jacket slipped into an electrical hallway that most employees didn't even know existed. A narrow place where the building's communication lines were bundled like nerves in a spine. Maya watched him enter. Then she followed, keeping to the shadows. Inside, he bent over the main electrical panel, attaching a small device. She recognized it instantly. A communication jammer, not a bomb, not an explosive. A device designed to turn a building into an isolated island. No calls, no alarms, no cameras, no signals. Her stomach dropped. This wasn't random. It was a planned containment. She stepped forward. Her voice was quiet, steady. "Don't turn that on." For the first time, the man looked surprised. He tilted his head, studying her. "You're just a cleaner," he said. "Walk away." "This doesn't concern you." Maya didn't move. "It concerns everyone who works here." His face changed, annoyance sharpening into cold focus. "Leave," he said firmly. "Now." She stepped back, memorizing every detail of the device. 2 seconds later, he activated it. The building hummed, lights flickered, elevator screens froze, security cameras blinked off, phones lost signal all at once. Sterling Tower had gone silent, and no one else noticed. At that moment, Richard Sterling was heading toward the main conference hall. He tried to call his assistant, but the call dropped immediately. He frowned, annoyed at the tower's terrible reception, then kept walking. Behind him, 2 men in dark jackets moved into the corridor. One ahead of him, one behind him. Their steps were perfectly timed. From the mezzanine above, Maya saw everything, the angles, the distance, the trap closing in. Her breath caught, her heart hammered. Every instinct screamed the same word. Move, move now. For a moment she didn't. She thought of Elena waiting at home, the bills stacked on her kitchen table. The quiet life she had built from the ashes of her past. The promise she made the day she walked away from her medic unit, never again step between danger and someone else. Her fingers tightened around the railing. Her eyes closed. "If I walk away," she whispered, "if I pretend I didn't see, I'll be safe." Then she remembered Richard's gentle good morning. The brief, real moment in his eyes, the exhaustion he carried alone, something inside her cracked open. "Not today," she whispered. "Not while I'm here." For the first time in years, Maya let instinct overrule fear. She ran, not with panic, but with the precise speed of someone who knew that seconds determined life or death. She raced down the service staircase, breathing hard, sweat gathering on her back. Her mind tracked every turn, every blind spot, every movement of the men converging on Richard. She pushed faster. She had to reach him first. Richard walked down the long hallway toward the investor room, unaware of the danger tightening around him. One man approached from the front, another from behind, and then Maya burst out of the service corridor, sprinting toward him. Their eyes met. Confusion crossed his face. Why was the quiet cleaning woman running straight at him? She opened her mouth to warn him, and at that exact second the door behind him slammed shut. The trap was set. And Maya Carter's life, everything she had tried to escape, was about to ignite again. The moment the door slammed behind Richard Sterling, the air in the hallway changed. A long, narrow corridor that had always felt ordinary suddenly became a sealed tunnel of danger. Richard turned sharply, confusion tightening his posture, and Maya, still sprinting toward him, felt the truth settle into her bones. There was no turning back now. Two men moved with practiced confidence. One stepped forward to block the path to the conference room. The other quietly approached from behind, sealing the exit. Their footsteps were steady, calculated, almost silent. Richard sensed the wrongness before he understood the threat. He stepped back and asked, "Excuse me, can I help you?" His voice tried to stay steady, but fear flickered in his eyes. The front man didn't respond. He simply raised a hand slightly, a gesture Maya recognized from another life. A tactical signal. Maya's pulse sharpened. She pushed through the last few steps, and her voice came out firm, controlled, and cold with clarity. "Richard, move!" Richard blinked, startled. The attackers looked her way too, momentarily thrown off by the sight of a cleaner giving orders like a trained operative. That moment of hesitation was all she needed. She grabbed Richard's sleeve and yanked him back just as the attacker lunged. The man's hand reached for Richard, but Maya intercepted, shoving Richard behind her with surprising strength. Richard stumbled, breath caught in his throat. "Maya." "What? Get behind me," she said. There was no room for argument in her tone. The attackers recovered instantly. Their eyes sharpened, their movements shifting from simple intimidation to calculated hostility. Maya watched every angle, how they balanced their weight, where their hands drifted, what they might be reaching for. Training she tried to bury resurfaced like it had been waiting. The rear attacker swung at her. She ducked, grabbed his wrist, and slammed him into the wall. Richard stared, stunned. Just minutes ago, she had been cleaning windows. The second attacker rushed forward. Maya pushed Richard aside, blocked the hit with her forearm, and winced as pain shot up her arm. But she didn't stop. The attackers exchanged a sharp glance. One whispered, "She's Pryor." Their entire demeanor changed. They understood she wasn't an obstacle, she was a threat. Richard's breathing grew heavy. He didn't understand what Maya was, but he understood one thing clearly. She was the only one standing between him and death. Maya grabbed Richard by the collar and pulled him into a side corridor. "Move," she ordered. He followed her without hesitation. Behind them, the attackers split, one following, the other circling through maintenance paths. Maya dragged Richard into a stairwell. "Why are they after you?" "I don't know," he stammered. "You must know something. There's a major investor meeting, a merger, but this doesn't make sense." She believed him. His fear wasn't fake. "The building is jammed," she said. "No phones, no cameras," Richard swallowed. "How do you know that?" She didn't answer. They started down the stairs until Maya felt movement below, footsteps, controlled, patient. "Back up," she whispered. Richard obeyed immediately. The man from the hallway appeared, climbing fast, eyes sharp with predatory certainty. "You again," he said. Maya placed herself between him and Richard. "Stay against the wall," she told Richard. The attacker rushed them. Maya met him halfway, grabbing the railing and swinging her body to kick his shoulder. He crashed into the steps, but he was strong. He grabbed her ankle and dragged her down. She hit the stairs hard. Pain radiated up her back. Richard's breath caught with fear, but Maya scrambled up before he could pin her. She struck his temple with precision. His head snapped sideways, but he lunged again, pushing her into the railing. Richard froze, helpless. Maya twisted her knee under his chest and forced him to the ground. Her voice was low and urgent. "Who are you working for?" He laughed through the pain. "It wouldn't matter if I told you." She struck him once more, clean, efficient, knocking him unconscious. She grabbed Richard's wrist. "We can't stay here." Maya pulled him into a supply room and shut the door behind them. Inside, the room was dim and crowded with boxes. She leaned her head against the cold metal, breathing hard. Richard stood across from her, chest rising and falling rapidly. For the first time, he truly saw her, saw the steel beneath the quiet exterior. "Who are you?" he whispered. Maya didn't answer immediately. Her hands shook, old memories clawing their way back. "A long time ago," she said softly, "I worked in dangerous places. I learned things I never wanted to use again." "And now you're a cleaner?" he asked gently. "I wanted a quiet life," she said. "I thought I could have one." They both fell silent, breath slowly calming. Outside the door, footsteps passed, controlled, searching. Richard leaned closer, voice low. Why would they want me? Maya pulled the communication fragment from her pocket. They were prepared. This isn't random. Richard closed his eyes. It's the merger. I'm about to expose corruption, billions at stake. Someone must have hired them to stop me. Maya nodded slowly. So you're the threat they need removed. He looked at her with guilt. And you got dragged into this because you were nearby. No, she said. I stepped into this because I couldn't let them hurt someone. His gratitude went deeper than words. Thank you, he whispered. Maya looked away, uncomfortable with the sincerity. They sat in silence. Maya stared at her trembling hands, hands once used to save lives in places where help never came. Hands she tried to hide from the world. Richard spoke softly. You didn't have to help me. Most people would have run. I've run from enough, she said quietly. Today I couldn't. Another silence, heavy, human. Richard studied her face, seeing the weight she carried. You're not invisible, Maya. Not anymore. The words hit her harder than she expected. Suddenly the intercom crackled with a hijacked signal. A distorted voice echoed through the building. Mr. Sterling, we know you're close. You can run, but she can't protect you forever. Maya stiffened. Richard turned pale. The attackers were regrouping, and they were losing patience. Maya stood and reached for a metal pipe, simple but effective. She handed Richard a wrench. I don't know how to use this, he whispered. You won't have to, she said. Just stay behind me. Their eyes met, a spark of trust neither expected. Footsteps approached the hallway again. We move now, Maya whispered. Before they corner us. Richard nodded. Fear still lived in his chest, but he wasn't facing it alone. Maya opened the door slowly. The hallway was empty. She scanned the shadows. They haven't secured the east wing yet. That's our way out. Richard stepped close behind her. Whatever happens, she said softly, stay close. I trust you, he answered. Maya inhaled sharply at those words. Trust wasn't something she had heard in a long time. Together, they stepped into the hallway, heading toward the only chance they had left. The building felt like it was holding its breath. The alarms were still dead, the system jammed, and the top executive floor was wrapped in an unnatural quiet. Maya stood alone, sweat collecting on her forehead, her chest rising and falling as she steadied her breathing. Her hands trembled, not with fear, but with readiness. Downstairs, chaos spread like fire. Employees ran in panic. Security tried to gather updates through flickering lights and confused voices. But here, it was silent. A silence so sharp it felt like the moment before lightning tears opened the sky. The CEO had been separated from his security team during the power disruption. He moved through the main hallway, unaware that he was walking straight into the danger Maya had been racing to stop. Then she heard footsteps, heavy, steady, confident in a way that felt wrong. She knew that rhythm. She knew that kind of man. The man in the gray jacket was coming. He thought he was alone. He thought no one in this building could see him. But Maya could. The long corridor stretched ahead, glass offices reflecting her small silhouette. She tightened her grip on the only thing she managed to grab, a long metal mop handle. It wasn't a weapon, but she had fought with less. He stepped into the hallway. For a moment their eyes met. Maya recognized him instantly. He, however, saw nothing more than a janitor standing in his way, someone invisible, someone harmless, someone he didn't need to take seriously. That mistake became her advantage. As he reached for the CEO's office door, Maya moved, fast, precise, a shadow coming alive. The mop handle slammed across his forearm, knocking his hand away from the hidden weapon inside his sleeve. He stumbled back, shocked, not from the pain, but from her audacity. Maya didn't hesitate. Something inside her snapped open. The instinct she had buried for nearly a decade surged through her blood like fire. Training she swore she would never use again. A courage she thought she had lost. But this time, she wasn't fighting for a mission or a code. She was fighting for every unseen worker who depended on her, every person who mocked her, and for the CEO who, despite never truly seeing her, didn't deserve to die. He lunged at her, she ducked. His fist crashed into a glass wall, cracking it into a spiderweb. He was strong, trained, furious. Maya used the environment around her, the narrow hallway, the desks, even the cleaning cart. She shoved the cart into him. The metal edge slammed into his ribs. As he stumbled, she grabbed a heavy-duty cleaning spray bottle and blasted it into his eyes. He yelled, swinging blindly. She stepped in close, too close for him to use his size against her. Her movements were sharp, disciplined, efficient, echoes of a past she had sworn to leave behind. And then footsteps. Someone was coming. Both Maya and the attacker froze. The CEO, Richard Sterling, appeared at the far end of the hallway. He stopped, breathless, staring at the scene he never expected to walk into. Maya fighting a trained threat like she had done it 100 times before. The attacker saw his window closing. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a concealed blade. Without hesitation, he charged straight toward the CEO. Maya moved before thought could catch up. She threw herself in front of the CEO and shoved him back. The blade cut across her arm, slicing through skin, warm pain rushing down her sleeve. But she did not flinch. She grabbed the attacker's wrist, twisted it with brutal precision, and slammed his arm against the wall. A sharp crack. The blade clattered to the floor. He collapsed just as security finally arrived. The CEO stared at her, not at the mop. Not at the uniform, but at the woman who had just saved his life with a skill she should not have had. His voice was shaking when he whispered, "Who are you?" Maya didn't answer. Her bleeding arm and trembling hands spoke for her. A medic rushed over. Security restrained the attacker. For the first time in years, Maya felt something inside her break open. Not from the pain, but from the weight she had been carrying alone. She leaned against the wall, whispering under her breath, "I told myself I wasn't going back to this life, but I couldn't let him die. Not like this." The CEO heard it, every word, and for the first time he truly saw her. Employees gathered in the hallway, staring at the broken glass and the attacker on the ground. The same people who dismissed her every day now stood frozen, their faces pale with disbelief. They saw the cut on her arm, the fierce determination in her eyes, the courage she had hidden in silence for years. The CEO stepped forward. His voice was steady, transformed by what he had witnessed. "This woman saved my life." The hallway fell into a heavy, reverent silence. No one laughed, no one dismissed her. No one dared look at her the same way again. Sunlight spilled through the tall windows behind her, catching the dust in the air. Maya stood in the center of the shattered hallway, wounded, exhausted, but powerful. A woman pulled out of invisibility by the truth of who she really was. As the attacker was taken away, the CEO whispered the line that changed everything. "The woman they ignored just saved us all." And every person watching felt the same chill. A truth revealed, a life transformed. A turning point that nothing could undo. The building exhaled. Chaos receded, replaced by quiet. Security swept floors. Medical teams moved methodically. Employees returned to their stations, shaken but unharmed. And in the middle of it all, Maya sat on a small bench outside the CEO's office. Her arm was bandaged, her breathing steady, but her mind wandered far from calm. She watched people walk by, their expressions no longer mocking or dismissive. Awe, confusion, respect. They stared at her, and the weight of their newfound recognition pressed against her like a stranger's hand. She never wanted to be seen. Visibility had always been dangerous. Recognition meant questions. Questions meant remembering a life she had tried so hard to leave behind. Then he appeared. CEO Richard Sterling stepped into the hallway. No entourage. No bodyguards, just him. He approached her slowly, carrying a quiet, careful gratitude in his posture. He sat beside her, leaving space, a respectful distance between them. For the first time, he was beside her, not above her, not beyond her, just human. "You saved my life," he said, simple, honest. Human. Maya didn't answer at first. Her gaze fell to her hands, feeling small under the weight of acknowledgement. Then she murmured softly, "Anyone would have done the same." Richard shook his head gently. "No, no one else could have." He looked at her with a softness she hadn't felt in years. "I've worked in this building 15 years, he said, "and I don't think I ever asked your name." She exhaled, not with anger but resignation. She had spent her life becoming small so others could feel comfortable. "It's Maya," she whispered, almost surprised it mattered. "Maya," he repeated, as if saying it aloud gave it power, sacred, intentional. And in that single word, something shifted, not her title, not her job. The world had suddenly granted her the space she had long deserved. Someone finally saw her without looking down. His gaze dropped to her bandaged arm. "Your moves, the way you handled him, that wasn't luck, that was training." Her jaw tightened. She fought the urge to retreat inward. "A long time ago," she said quietly, "I worked with people who handled threats like him. Then I left that life behind." No details, no explanations. The scars themselves told the story. Richard nodded gently. "You don't owe me the story. Whatever your past is, it's nothing to be ashamed of." Her eyes blinked hard. No one had ever said that to her. Maybe no one ever would again. Later that afternoon, the postponed investor meeting began, but news traveled fast. The CEO had almost been assassinated. A janitor saved him. The intruder was highly trained. The building's security had failed, but she had not. The investors were unsettled. The company's future hung by a thread. Richard entered the room. Maya followed, clean clothes, not her uniform, simple. Dignified, present, gasps filled the room, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. Richard spoke plainly. "This woman saved my life today, and I want you to know why I trust this building more than ever." No embellishment, no drama. Only truth. One by one, the investors rose, not for him, for her. It was the first standing ovation of Maya's life. She didn't know where to look. Her chest tightened. Her eyes burned. She simply let the sunlight of recognition wash over her, letting it fill a space that had been empty for far too long. Afterward, Richard asked to speak with her privately. "I want to create a new position," he said. "You'd oversee emergency readiness, internal safety, threat detection. You clearly have skills we need." Maya blinked, stunned. "Sir, I clean floors." "You saved lives," he replied simply. "Let me give you a job worthy of what you can do." For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a future shaped not by fear or hiding, but by purpose. She hesitated, battling the old instinct to vanish. Then she nodded. "I'll think about it," she whispered, a promise to herself before anyone else. Returning to her regular hallway to collect her cart, she found the employees who had once mocked her waiting. They were unsure, nervous, hesitant. One young intern stepped forward, his voice shaky. "We were wrong." Another added softly, "Thank you for saving all of us." Maya didn't smile, she didn't scold, she nodded. "Respect goes both ways," she said gently. A simple line carrying the weight of years of silence. They lowered their heads. A small but meaningful change had begun. As the building emptied and night fell, Maya stepped outside. The cool evening air brushed her face. Her arm ached. Her body was tired, but her spirit, light, free. She looked back at the towering glass building, the place where she was invisible, underestimated, dismissed, mocked, and where she had finally risen into her own light. She whispered to herself softly, "Maybe it's time to stop hiding." And with a hopeful breath, she walked into the night. No longer just the janitor everyone laughed at, but the woman who changed everything without asking for applause. In every building, every city, every corner of life, there are people we walk past without seeing. People we judge by uniforms, job titles, or social standing. People we assume are small simply because we never bothered to look deeper. Maya's story reminds us of a truth we too often forget. Strength does not always stand in the spotlight. Sometimes it pushes a cleaning cart at 5 in the morning. Sometimes it wears a uniform others mock. Sometimes it keeps its history hidden because the world never cared enough to ask. But when life tests us, really tests us, the people we underestimated are often the ones who hold everything together. Maya didn't ask to be a hero. She didn't wake up seeking recognition or power or applause. All she wanted was a quiet life, a chance to heal from a past that had already taken too much from her. Yet when others froze, when fear paralyzed the world around her, she stepped forward. Not for praise, not for reward, but because her heart refused to let injustice win. The lesson is clear. Never judge someone by the job they have, the clothes they wear, or the place society assigns them. Behind the quietest people can live the fiercest courage. And more importantly, being overlooked does not mean you are powerless. Sometimes being unseen gives you the strength to save the very people who ignored you. If Maya's story touched you, let it be a reminder. The world changes when we stop looking down and start looking closely, at the people beside us, at the ones we walk past, at ourselves. And maybe the next time someone is dismissed or underestimated, you'll remember her. The woman everyone laughed at, until the day she proved that heroes don't need titles. They just need a moment to rise. If this story meant something to you, share it. Remind someone that their worth is bigger than the world's expectations.